Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Daniel Marschner. I'm the Director of International Admission at Loyola Marymount University, and it's my pleasure to speak with you today on the topic of studying at a liberal arts university in the United States. I'd like to give you a little bit of background about myself before we get started. I've been at LMU since 2016. In my role as Director of International Admission, I work with first year transfer and graduate students who are interested in coming to the U.S. and study at LMU from outside the United States. And I have actually been attending many liberal arts schools myself. So this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I graduated in 2016 with my doctoral degree from the University of Cincinnati in education studies. And my dissertation was focused on the interaction between international and domestic students. And so, again, I have a lot of expertise in this area, but also I have attended liberal arts institutions as a student, as well as worked in them for the past 13 years. And then previous to this, I have experience as a classroom teacher for about 4 years of teaching Spanish at the high school level. And so again, these are things that I've considered for quite a while. And so it's a pleasure to speak with you about these things today. A little more background about Loyola Marymount University. We are located in Los Angeles, California. We are a medium-sized institution of just under 10,000 students. You can see here, this is a view of our library, which is considered to be one of the top libraries in the country by Princeton Review. And it's a very beautiful campus, and we're lucky to have a really great location in Los Angeles. You can see here in the background the Pacific Ocean, which is about 1 kilometer away. And if you're not familiar with Los Angeles, it's the second largest city in the United States. It's a beautiful place to visit and to live and study in. We have people from all around the world in LA, wonderful weather, lots of really great things to do outdoors. And just overall a really dynamic international global city to explore. So we're very, very excited to be able to offer a great place for our students to study. We are a Jesuit institution, and so again, we are an institution with a liberal arts core. That is a group of schools that are Christian and Catholic, but we do not require students to be Christian or Catholic by any means. We have students that come from lots of different faith backgrounds and traditions. And it's a network of institutions all around the world, all focused on 3 core principles, with the first being care for the individual, the second a global perspective, and the third a emphasis on community service and community engagement. So a little bit of LMU. I certainly encourage you to explore our website here, lmu.edu, if you'd like to know more about the university. So a little bit about college and university in the United States. First of all, it's important to note that this is about a third, on this map is about a third of the higher education institutions that are located in the United States. So there are over 4,500 institutions, unique institutions in the US. They can be found in large cities, in small towns. Some of them have 50,000 students or more. Some of them have less than 1,000 students. Some of them are located in places that have a very distinct seasons over the course of 4 years. So the northern part of the country, if you've not experienced snow before and things like that, you've likely experienced that in those places. And then in the southern part of the United States, typically, like in Los Angeles, the climate tends to be more moderate and pretty consistent over the course of the year. So again, a huge variety of institutions. And it's important to note that what we do not have in the United States, which is unique and different than what you find in a lot of other countries, is a Ministry of Higher Education or its equivalent. And so a governing body that basically sets policies and procedures for institutions in the US. Although we do have a Department of Education, essentially what we have in the US are individual unique entities. And so the idea basically is that each institution can set policies in terms of admission, in terms of the types of course of study it offers, in terms of the types of students they would like to attract. So there's a wide variety of experiences that are available at each of our institutions. And it makes it challenging for someone who's coming from outside the United States to really understand the US educational system. But it's important to note that, again, each institution is unique in the way that it approaches education. And specifically, many of the institutions on this map would have that liberal arts basis. So let's talk a little bit more about what that means. First of all, what liberal arts does not mean are the fine arts. And so if you're thinking that liberal arts are painting and photography and dance and music and things like that, they certainly can incorporate those things. And certainly the artistic pursuits are something that a liberal arts education can offer students, but that's not the core of what a liberal arts education is. Liberal arts essentially is a focus on the humanities and on reasoning and approach to knowledge. So these are often part of the general education requirements at many institutions in the US. These include classes in things like literature, rhetoric, logic, argument, things like that, of how to present yourself and communicate clearly and concisely. And so the idea here basically is what you're trying to understand is a better sense of how to create an argument and how to support your ideas. Those are really strong focus within the liberal arts. To be clear, liberal arts is very different and distinct from rote learning. And rote learning and we'll talk about that just a little bit further, is really something that's more focused on knowledge that is passed from professor to student. Active learning, by comparison, is much more about engaging with the information that you receive, really working through some ideas that you may have. It's a very important factor in a lot of the courses that are offered at a liberal arts institution, because so much of it is focused on the idea of critical thinking. There are several liberal arts institutions like LMU that offer philosophy or some variation of philosophy as part of the courses that they have students take in this liberal arts tradition. And one of the major concepts in philosophy is this idea of the Socratic method. If you're not familiar, Socrates was a famous philosopher in ancient Greece, and his method of teaching was to ask questions of his students. Why do you believe that? What do you think justice is? What do you think truth is? And so the idea is basically to think a little bit more clearly about why you believe what you do and why you see the world the way that you do. Now, as a student, those can often be very frustrating conversations, especially if you're someone who appreciates things like mathematics and sciences that are pretty clear cut. So you know what 2 + 2 equals, right? But trying to talk about what's justice or what's truth or what an ideal is a much more complicated concept that doesn't have a clear answer. And so from that perspective, it can be frustrating because you don't necessarily come up with easy solutions. What you're really thinking about is ways to approach these challenges. And so again, that's really something that's really important to the liberal arts tradition. And it certainly works very well also with the scientific method, because basically with the scientific method, what you're trying to say is through the hypothesis concept of saying this is a one possible explanation for what may be taking place in this particular phenomenon. And so going through and doing a systematic process to be able to see if your concept is correct or can be supported is as a way that you, again, demonstrate that you are questioning knowledge, learning, trying to understand and justify the decisions that you've made about why you believe what is taking place. And so again, that's certainly something that fits very well in the liberal arts tradition. In terms of the role of the faculty within a liberal arts tradition, it's important to note, again, these are very different if you're talking about rote learning versus active learning. And so when you're talking about the faculty within a rote learning environment, you're talking about an expert in the professor's field. Someone who will be often is in terms of the way that knowledge is presented to students is often as a lecture kind of module, meaning that the professor will speak to the student, the student will listen, the student will receive the information. So the idea is basically it's a one-way street. And then typically in a rote learning environment, the professor passes the information and the student responds with that information on an examination. So you're basically tested by your ability to memorize and understand knowledge that has been given to you. So you're not questioning anything that you receive, and you are really a consumer of information, if that makes sense. So the idea is that you're given information which then you are asked to use without questioning why you've received that, where that information comes from or anything like that. Active learning is much more conversation-based, much more collaborative. And so the idea is basically that the professor in that environment asks students to think about their assumptions, asks students to think about the knowledge that they've obtained, think about the ways that knowledge may have been influenced over the course of their lives, for example. And so the idea is to really think more clearly about why you believe the way that you do. And certainly that's something that we find very often in the context of the classroom at LMU, and that the students and professors really see themselves as engaging in a partnership rather than a clearly superior professor who is providing knowledge to and helping provide the knowledge to someone else who is simply receiving it and not really questioning where that knowledge comes from or why that knowledge is important. So in broad basis, liberal arts in the United States is really focused on the concept of a more broader perspective. So it's different than what you might find in the UK or UK pattern systems. So from that perspective, usually a degree in the United States is a little bit longer If you go to a UK or a UK pattern institution, typically the bachelor degree is a 3-year course, whereas in the United States, typically it's a 4-year course. Again, with the liberal arts perspective, you are taking classes in many different subjects. You certainly will take classes into your major course of study, but overall, the concept is that you do have that broader base of knowledge to apply as well. And so the concept is really to think about creating a lifelong interest and appreciation for learning and knowledge, and also to think about not just the first job that you may receive once you have finished your degree, but for the longer term as well. So it's to focus on teaching students to be adaptable and to be flexible and to to be innovative in the way that they approach challenges in the future. And certainly we find that's very valuable for a long-term career, as you may have seen or heard before, the amount of jobs that students will be able to obtain in the future that haven't even been developed yet, for example, or the amount of times that a student may switch his or her career over the course of their lifetime. And so the idea there is that there's a lot of really good applications to this concept of how to approach a problem, not necessarily what is the answer to this specific problem. So that's the general concept of liberal arts education. Again, this is another photo of LMU, and certainly that's a big core of the experience that we offer on our campus. Again, what that means really in a practical sense is that students are very much engaged with the life of the university, and there's a lot of learning that takes place outside of the classroom as well, because students had a chance to explore those ideas and those concepts within the classroom and with their professors, but then they're very encouraged to have those conversations outside of the classroom as well. And so as students grapple with concepts they maybe have never really thought about before, never really to this extent, the idea is basically that students can really benefit greatly from the opportunity to really understand how to approach a problem, how to work with others to create possible solutions, how to consider what fallacies they may have in their arguments. So again, there's a lot of concept of debate and presentation of argument and supporting statements and things like that that are crucial to the liberal arts. Now again, at a place like LMU, we do have that liberal arts core that is part of any major that we offer. And so it's important that this can be compatible to students studying lots of different programs. So for example, we have students who are studying things like the STEM fields and civil, mechanical, electrical engineering, and computer science, and biology and chemistry and things like that, that you may feel, you might think initially, it would have very little to do with the liberal arts. And what we find actually is that students who are able to do an experience like a STEM major and also liberal arts core, is that these are students who are really very able to again, address challenges and new opportunities and be very innovative in the way they approach questions. Our College of Business is also very well known, for example. And so a lot of the focus of the liberal arts with our College of Business is really helping students think through about ethical decisions in a business environment. You know, just because a student can make money in an enterprise, maybe that's not the best idea. Maybe that's not something that would be valuable long term. And again, at a place like LMU, we're focused constantly on the idea of trying to create a better world, trying to create the world in which we want to live in. And that's true in a lot of institutions of higher learning throughout the United States as well. And so you're always thinking about maybe why the world is the way it is right now and how it could be better. And so again, when you think about it, so it's not so much about this is the way it is and this is the way it always will be. You're thinking about in terms of why is the world the way that it is, and how could I make a positive impact and ideally make a place a better institution, a better place for future generations, for example. So again, that's the basics of what it means to attend a liberal arts institution. I hope that is helpful for you. I certainly appreciate your willingness to be with me today. I am excited to answer any questions that you may have after the presentation is completed, and I hope that you enjoy your rest of the time at EduTrust. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today, and have a great day.